Laura J here with a like-minded lady, Rachel Huffman. So it's our first opportunity to meet this morning outside of the group we've both been part of for quite some time. And we were just having some off-camera discussion about what's going on and how your own family is being impacted by all of this. And if you want to speak into what's real, Rachel, I think a lot of people would benefit from being able to eavesdrop on this conversation.
Right. So kind of what we were touching on is just the state of it. I guess back to school, I was sort of ranting a little bit there about university. And I don't know, I think so often in the past year, you're trying to predict, what's going to happen. What should we do? And so I was saying to Laura, my daughter who's attending university, this is going into her third year, keeps saying to us, and she has for this entire season, I'm not learning anything. I'm not learning anything compared to when she was actually attending classes, because everything is online. And I mean, that's disheartening, And then when you add the cost burden, to every household, I mean, it's just, why are we paying to have our child live, close to the university, because maybe they'll be going back in real classes. But I think, like, if you've noticed all along, they tell, it's going to go back. And then September, a week before school starts, the numbers are up. We're going to have to stay with online. And so what's going to come of our children, right?
Well, that's the thing. All of this has been about corrupting our will. And that's actually what these injections do. And I was having a conversation with a gentleman that is going to be helping me with my summons for speaking on stage, because essentially what is happening right now is that these injections actually interfere with our willpower. So it's not showing up on the surface, but it's on a cellular connection and a soul level connection. They're interfering with our connection to the 4 lower bodies. And this is not being talked about. I read it once a couple of days ago, and then the conversation he and I were having, and then we'll continue to have today, has been really profound and insightful. But if you actually take this to the level of our youth, which are who the solution needs to come from, essentially the youth are being targeted right now because they are used to being under the rule of parents, because we are taught by an education system that teaches us to keep our power outside of ourselves. Trust your parents, trust your guardian, trust your doctor, put the authority figures outside of yourself. And so with
habits, yes, habits of compliance, strong habits of complying. And in fact, one of the things that I have read and I've listened to a few talks on this is that the further you go, through the academic system, the stronger your habits to comply and to follow rules become. And so you can clearly see that, because I've often lamented over how is it that, people, lawyers, doctors, people that are so intelligent and, smart, wise people are completely missing what's happening right in front of them. Their own training would dictate, you, if they were using common sense, this is not scientific, this is not the best thing for my patient, but they can't see it. And I have to believe, I mean, this again, a theory that I've read, and I think it's because the more time that you spend within the academic system that is actually set up to indoctrinate and to shape the mind and the compliance of people. It does not create free thinking people at all. It does exactly the opposite now. And that has to be why, a person with barely a high school education who's out construction work can see this and listen to videos and get on to literally a medical conversation and is like, I get it. They get it, and I think, all of our lives, probably a lot of people like us who maybe in my case I can speak to felt like, oh, your parents, you're rebellious. Why don't you listen? Why aren't you, you talk too much in class, Rachel. Like, this is my life story. You're just doing this and paying attention to that when you're supposed to be looking here. And it's like 2020, we all woke up and it's like, aha, that's why the Lord made me this way. Like, because we need people who sort of look away and question. And it's these people who are going to be the ones that lead us out.
Yes. Totally just gave me goosebumps, which is how my intuitive system responds to truth. And this is the thing, we need to learn how to trust ourselves again. And that's where the willpower comes in, because the heart is the bridge between the intellectual ideas and then the practical grounding of those ideas into physical form. And so I would love to just actually point out the fact that I was always a good student, not the best, but I did well enough. And essentially I did my very best to pay attention and be good enough. And that's the universal story we're all really dealing with here. But in 2019, I woke up to the system and the corruption of the system. And it started because I went on a sacred sojourn out west with somebody that it didn't end up working out the way that it was supposed to, quote unquote, where I was going to come back having written the book that was about the transformation of self-image through the hero's journey from a soulful perspective. And I came back empty-handed and then had to deal with all the criticism of everybody saying like, is Laura got a job yet? What's Laura doing? And all of the judgments, everybody coming in because I haven't lived a mainstream normal reality. And all of that hit me so hard that later in the year when I did another trip, no problem. When I did another trip, I basically got into a state where it was like, I was so connected and riding the magic of the moment that it became so clear that the system was corrupt. And I wound up getting locked in the mental health system for 2.5 weeks upon my return. And I learned that if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. And what I also experienced firsthand that gave me eyes to see all of this playing out was what happened behind closed doors to me, in that eye contact was avoided with patients that desperately needed connection. I was denied a request 3 times with the verbiage, I'm doing something more important than your request. I'll get to it if I have a chance later.
Yeah.
And that experience of being told that, and with the amount of training I have to be like, that's an interesting way to respond to somebody the first time. But then the second time thinking, okay, well, that's a strategy. And then the third time when my mom and her husband came in to visit me, and I said, okay, well, an outsider will be able to get it better because they need to hide what they're actually doing.
Right.
And so when she asked for me, she got the same response. And I noticed the difference in our response because her hands went up and I'm so sorry. And of course you're so busy. And it was a silly request and don't worry about it. And she completely surrendered because she doesn't want any conflict. And I don't want conflict either, but I want what I am asking for because that's a respect factor.
Exactly. I can speak to that. And I've often, again, over the past year reflected, I think it's really pushed a lot of us, clearly you, and I could say for me too, to look back and be like, aha, so that's why I was fighting in that battle for those years, aha, so that's what that was training me for today. And so in our case, our son is dyslexic, and so grade 1, it's like, man, like he can't even alphabet, we're having problems. So we kind of start on this journey. By 6th grade, it's like grade 2 reading level. But I want to say, we started advocating, for him. And it's exactly kind of when you were speaking, it kind of brought that back. You have to be non-compliant. You have to be in the sense where I'm pushing back, like I'm not settling for this answer. How is it possible that a teacher in this school doesn't know about a dyslexic center 10 minutes away from this school that we are currently in? You know, how is it that you just want to pat them on the head and, okay, well, we're just, you know, going to change the curriculum for them, but don't worry, their life's going to be fine. It's like, no, it's not going to be fine. And my son is an individual. He's not one of the group, and we're not pushing him through in this way. And so you kind of start to put on, and I love Ephesians. I read the Bible, you know, the helmet, the breastplate, you're putting on the armor of, for a spiritual, do you know what I mean, battle in a sense. And it takes so much because, and I find it in every case in our lives, you have to learn the language. So, okay, right now I've had to relearn legal language, municipal laws, you know, how do we appoint, or where do medical officers of health come from in our communities? I never paid attention to that before. Back to my son's case, I don't even speak the same language as a parent that the teachers do. Do you know what I'm saying? Like in at the board level, or with special ed teachers and that. So we have to hire somebody that, you know, did do the psych ed to be with us in the meetings with the school board, so that she can speak the language that they speak and advocate for us, for our son, you know? And so it's like, but it's continuing to look into a situation. And even though you don't see an answer there, right there, knowing and believing and having the faith that there is something out there, because again, like you said, because you're following your inside voice, you know, your intuition, your spirit. And that is such an important process that we all need to get in tune with. And it's been the people that I've come across who have journeyed mostly through trauma, or some other search, an intentional search, you know, for that intuition. They're the ones that are like, you know, this feels wrong, but also they're the ones who have the courage to keep going, because even though trauma is often terrible, and obviously you suffered, whatever the degree, you do have a memory somewhere in your body. And it's like, I can deal with this. I remember this. Like, I'm scared, but I remember that I can walk through this, even though I'm fearful, right? Like, so somewhere in our memory, our cells, our body has this ability to stand up and keep moving, you know? And so I'm so thankful for every struggle, everything. Again, when you're going back to, you know, come back home from out west, or you're broke up with a guy that you thought was going to be the one, and everyone's like, huh, what happened? What's that? Oh, poor you. It's like, aha. And now I know why that happened. And now I know what it did for me. And now I can use it to get through today, you know, and to find people like us, finding one another that can share that similar, you know, experience, and lift one another up. It's like, stop feeling bad for yourself. You're the best person you could be, because of everything that everyone else labeled as a screw up is actually the best thing that ever could happen for you.
Oh, my body is just lit up, and I'm so grateful to be on this call right now, Rachel, because there are so many people that I know need to hear this message. Because courage, if you actually break it down, it's the heart and age combined. And it doesn't mean you have to be old or that you have to have journeyed a tremendous amount. It just means you have to have heart in order to be willing to show up and use the experiences that you've had to bring you to this moment to say that I am an individual, which means in divided, or if you actually break it down, it's in you all. So it's about the division of you all in the one. And that's when we feel so alone, because it's like, people don't know how to support lighthouses. The people that have been through so much and that have survived 100% of our darkest days, which includes you who watches this now, because every single one of us made it here in this moment to hear this message. So we are strong, and people don't know what to do with strong people because they can't control them. It's like there's a meme with the Joker's face that says, we're only crazy to the ones that can't control us. And so today we actually came together because we wanted to unpack Natural Law and Universal Remedy episode 45, which we both watched on our own and took notes in. And so we're wanting to just give you an idea as to how you can find the video to be able to watch the full thing. And
Right.
then Rachel and I are going to go through our notes and just really share what the biggest takeaways for us were. And for me personally, having done many meetings for the Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta movement,
Mhm.
which was evoked March 23rd, 2001, when the barons called the crown on their treasonous activity. And the queen basically said she didn't have the capacity to do what was being requested without Parliament's assistance, which meant that she, who is supposed to be above Parliament, was saying they had more power than her, which showed that the crown had been usurped. And thus,
Right.
that was how it was able to be evoked March 23rd, 2001. Now, anytime there's only one solution, generally speaking, it's a trap, which in this video, it's powerful because what they say is that the Charter of the Forest is actually the
Yes.
companion document to
I
Article
was just bringing that up.
61. So if you
Right.
want to speak into that, Rachel.
Well, I mean, first of all, something that really, I mean, obviously the entire video spoke to me. I watched it multiple times. Is that who's ever heard of the Charter of the Forest?
Not,
Like,
right?
neither, not at all. And so why is that? You know, and again, as you journey down these paths, you start to realize how many facts and how much of our history has been intentionally cut out. And then, of course, you're asking yourself why. The Charter of the Forest, I mean, essentially is that people are still allowed. I'm paraphrasing because I didn't actually write down the definition, but the food and the God-given, you know, right to exist and to thrive was actually put into law, and it was called the Charter of the Forest, and at the same time as the Magna Carta. And so that obviously stood out to me. But then the other thing that I really loved about this video or talk was the corporate feudalism. And it's like, that's so true. Do you know what I mean? We are now living in a system where the corporations are the crown.
Right.
And we pay due and homage to them. Almost it's idolatry in a sense to how much, I mean, how is it that Amazon has never run out of anything, right? They're not having trouble getting computer boards or cotton or wood or anything. I mean, you need anything, you want to order it on Amazon, you can get it. You go to your local store, we're out of that, we're out of this. They've never, I mean, where are they manufacturing their goods that they're selling on Amazon? I mean, that is, so you can just see this direction. But back to the video, or actually, why don't you speak to the Charter of the Forest before I go on, because there's something kind of, it goes on to another level. So you go ahead on that, what your thoughts were.
I need to really pick into, like, I really need to dig into it more because it was my first introduction to it. And I want to actually mention the video that I watched after this one that opened a lot more doors too, because it actually talks about the 4 jurisdictions that actually are covered by laws, which is land, air, water, and space. Space being not generally included within the court system, but space actually being who we are and whose we are, and that connection to the grand overall designer that we come from, and that tying into will. And that interview, if anyone is interested, is David Straight with Christopher James on A Warrior Calls. Excellent video. But going back to the Charter of the Forest, it's the first explicit declaration of rights of natural men and women. And in 1215, the fight over who gets to control the vassals and serfs. and the People's Declaration that they would never cede the rights of liberties of living, which right now, in response to your point about how are the big box chains still open and not receiving supply issues when the mom and pop shops are. And if you actually look at Rockefeller Report 2010, if we look at Agenda 21, the Sustainability Act, if we look at Agenda 2030, if we actually look at the fact in October 2019, they hosted Event 201 for 5 hours. It was strategy planning as to how to respond in case there were a pandemic.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. Slip up the tongue.
So,
I know, and it's kind of uncanny, but not. And another sort of spiritual level over the past year. My kids laugh when I say this, but like in vampire movies or horror movies, I was a big fan as a younger person. And the vampire has to ask permission to come in your house, right? Or they can't come in. This is, and I've been starting to make that connection. It's almost like these psychopaths that are doing this, if you really pay attention, and it's not actually hard, they do announce everything that they're going to do. And they literally name it of exactly what it is that they're going to put out upon us. They tell us first. Yeah. I've been saying this for 5 years. Take them at their word. When Justin Trudeau says you're going to be in lockdown, life isn't going to go back to normal till 2022, he means it. They mean it. They mean what they say. We are years behind them. And when they say they're going to do something, they have already put it in place. They're just telling you now because it's about to happen. That's the thing.
They're trying to. That's their plan. Right. But it's by conscious conversations like this where we're able to intercept their intentions by actually sharing the truth. And even though it's ugly, it's something that we can look at together, because now when there's more than one, we enter into a mastermind, which is where two or more gather in my name.
That's right.
We then become more powerful. And so this is an opportunity to do exactly that. And the nature of this conversation, I just knew when I saw that you had also taken loads of notes in the comments. It was just like, oh, dear Lord, we need to connect.
To have a conversation.
I need to hear what you've got, because it sounded fruitful, and what you've shared, Rachel, is just spot on. So if you want to share the next.
Well, something I guess that spoke to me in this is the idea, and actually the fact. So going back to the Charter of the Forest, we have not granted permission to the people that are doing this to us. We have not opened the door, so to speak, when they're knocking. It's just happening. And without these types of videos and the conversations that we're having, I know that people don't realize that they have the ability to say, no, thank you. Actually, I didn't agree to this contract that you're saying I'm in. I did not sign anything. And so if I didn't grant you permission, then you don't have the authority or the ability to enact or to impose or to push me into something. And so, I mean, it's something I encourage people is like, don't fear, because actually you have the power to say no to something, and saying no actually does work. But I'm shocked how many people don't do it.
They don't think they can, because we've been trained to be inferior. And that is because we are in fear. And so that is when we start to understand the nature of evil, at being an energy veil over the truth. And I want to speak actually from a personal experience of the vampiric nature of the system, because when I was in the mental health system, I called one of my uncles, and I was saying about the fact that this is vampirus here. They're stealing our energy. Like there were tests that were done that were not necessary on me, that really freaked me out. And I also had the experience where they would check on me in the place where they sent me Hamilton up the mountain, West Fifth, which I called Hamilton's #1 waterfall. But that was just
Right.
to make it easier for me to just kind of be part of the facade that I was going through the experience of, and choosing faith instead of fear, because I
Yeah.
understood after the first 4 days where I was in my power but I was totally out of my element, and I just had my power taken away, or I just had my rights taken away, which I had never experienced as a privileged white girl from a good family. It's just like I didn't realize how easy it was until it happened to me,
Right.
which is why I
I
share
know.
the personal experience of, actually, before I went into this, I was speaking with a very faithful person who advised me about this very thing, in that they have to be invited in. And that I was told before I got in there, and not having a religious background at all, I was told that you could say, "In the name of Jesus Christ, get out." And they have
Right.
to leave, because the darkness
Yeah.
cannot be in the same space as the light. And even though I wasn't religious and I had no relationship with Jesus at the time, it was just like, okay, so I used it the first time. One of these vampiric staff opened my door for the first time. I'd kept my door open for the first few days because I was afraid to be in there on my own in case somebody came in uninvited. And I wasn't actually worried about the other patients, because it's only
Right.
the other staff that can come into the rooms of the patients, and they are the ones I feel, in my heart of hearts, it didn't happen to me, and I can't say anything, but
Yeah.
bad things happen
Yeah.
to patients by the staff because of the power
For
dynamic
sure.
in a place
That's
where,
right.
if you're in there and you've already been claimed to be insane or not able to advocate for yourself,
Right.
who's going to actually believe you over the professional?
No one. And that's actually what you can see happening on a societal level,
Yes.
where the people like us are being called
No.
out, or herded out
Yeah.
and placed into this box of, well, crazy, conspiracy, rebellious, whatever
Label.
label you would put, yeah, on somebody that needs to be contained in some way, or changed, or restrained in that sense. And so that's, again, that's completely intentional. And the thing I've also found interesting is it's unrelenting. Okay, so somebody that I work with, let's say, and I have a daily conversation, and I'm sharing information, and we trust one another, and it's good, they're listening to me maybe an hour a day, right? And I'm not saying listening, but we're having that conversation an hour a day. That is a constant bombardment from the other side. And another sort of, it's, I think it's difficult for us is to get a clear message to people, is that we have so many messages. There are so many things that this is coming at from every direction. So we're in agriculture, you know, the damage and the control that they're trying to take over the food
Yes.
supply would terrify, I think, anybody, that is really paying attention. So there's that, then our freedom to move, the damage they're doing to the financial um, markets, all of it. So there's so many avenues. How do you wake someone up versus their approach? Like, they're doing all these things, but they're not talking about all these things. All they're talking about is wear your mask, do your part, stay safe, get your vaccine. That's it. Or I probably shouldn't. But so they're on point. Their message, it's targeted, it's simple, and it is effective.
It's a distraction.
Verse, that's right. And so when we come in and we like have all of these things that you're looking at and you're trying, like, I need to warn people about this and this and this.
Yeah.
And so I think a simple point, and a point that we need to continually repeat, is that we do not fear, right? Like you're saying, do not fear, have faith. And you have the ability, this, the charter of the forest, our freedoms as a human being are not granted to us by a government at all, or from another person. And if you believe that your freedom to move and travel, your freedom to congregate with others is granted to you by Doug Ford or any other human, then you will never get where we are until you see that your rights, human rights, do not come from another human. They come from something larger than us, from inside of you. You have to get to that point.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. This is about empowering you to be able to advocate for yourself, to see what is happening without playing into the 4D fear matrix. Because fear leads to anger, and all of those lower vibratory emotions take us into a downward emotional spectrum of density that keep us bound to what exists currently. And what we're here for is to rise above that. It is
That's
not
right.
just about lawful dissent. It is about
No.
lawful assent by remembering
Well,
who and whose we are.
that's right. And just, I love our conversation, but just to go back to, right, the whole purpose of our video, which is the conversation, is that I want the message, I guess people need to know, we have not authorized the actions that are being forced upon us. And this is something that they go over and over again. And really anything of David Martin's is similar to this. But we are dealing here with people who are not elected, they're not appointed, and they're not authorized to do what they're doing. We are the citizens. They work for us. Do you know?
Citizens, though, is a dangerous territory because you cannot be a sovereign citizen. And as a citizen, you are chattel. So we are essentially we're acknowledging and accepting and condoning what is happening because as a citizen, we are a slave. And at least the public servants get paid to be slaves. But what is happening right now is that we are being placed underneath of the public servants. So it's like we're slaves that don't even get paid. We just have to use our time to fill out 100-question questionnaire for a census. What?
Yeah. Well, we're being controlled and we're being manipulated. And actually, I want to say that it was David Martin. It may have been Anna VonReitz that said it, that they do not teach, and this is intentional, that it is not taught to us to experience citizen versus person versus municipal participant. Okay. We can be a municipal participant, but exactly, we're taught through our education system, and it's really through the setup, that we are citizens. And that's exactly right. It's indoctrination. We do not benefit from it either. That's another thing they talk about this. The benefits do not match the cost, of doing business with them does not equal the benefits afforded to us. This is a contract that we're in that I think we're all now saying, why am I participating in this? I don't want to. I don't even remember agreeing to it, but I don't know how to get out. And I think another thing that has to be said and people have to understand is that you can't participate at all with fascists. And that's the really scary part here, is that we've all been trying to work with evil, but not want to be partnered with it. But in fact, the only way that you can be free of it is to absolutely reject it. Like, I think that comes from my Christian faith, in the sense where it's like, you can't believe in Jesus or preach the Bible and then sin and cheat and do things to people. It doesn't work like that. You can do it, but it's probably not going to be effective. You're not going to get the same soul fulfillment, the same benefits of the spiritual walk, with Christ or with any religion or belief system that you have. You can't walk with evil, partner with it at all. You have to reject it. And that is very, very scary, because saying no could get, when you open up your businesses, you're getting a fine. You're going to get bullied by people. I had a friend who got yelled at yesterday at a grocery store for not wearing a mask, like sworn at. That's scary.
Well, it's because it justifies the person that is yelling's decision to participate in something they don't fully agree with, which puts them automatically in a victim, rescuer, persecutor, punisher spectrum dynamic, where they're already playing all of those roles within themselves. And so because they're beating themselves up for not standing up for themselves and their rights, they
Right.
then have to put down somebody who is. And then there's also all of the conditioning around stay safe and do it for the sake of the tribe, because the tribe has always been used to make the individuals conform or get out. And right now
Mhm.
that's happening with many stages of the genocide. The 10 stages of genocide, we've got
Yeah,
multiple boxes ticked, and even the labels. If you call somebody a conspiracy theorist and they come and pick up the conspiracy theorist, that's not Rachel and Laura, that's just the conspiracy theorists. But
that's right.
at what point do you start to see the fact that the conspiracies actually have more foundation and truth behind them than what the facts are saying?
That's right. And actually, in this conversation that Sacha and Dr. David Martin and Reinette and Anna have, Dr. Martin speaks to conspiracy and speaks to the actual definition of a conspiracy. When you watch this talk, I hope everybody does, you're going to see as well, they are criminals. This is criminal behavior. This is actually bribery. They are committing corporate fraud. They are extorting. It's bribery. It's criminal behavior beyond our imagination. And we just continue to go along, hoping that one day, at some point, these criminals who are literally siphoning every little last thing out of us that they possibly can and will continue to, will drop it. We'll announce one day, okay, your freedom is back. It's not coming back.
Unless we take it back.
Not, that's right.
You don't get your toys back from an abusive parent when they take them away. It's like the abusive parent has already vindictively thrown those out. And so this is what people need to understand, and why I share my personal experiences, because I know I'm not alone, and most people don't talk about an experience that's so stigmatized. So I share more the personal experience, but I love that
For
you
sure.
delved so deep into this, because I was more so writing notes and then I got on to the next video that led me to the next opportunity
Hmm.
that are
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
leading me where I need to be. And
Well,
so you want to carry on.
well, I wanted to touch on too and again, Dr. Martin talks about this, and he talks about it in multiple videos, that we live in a managed, controlled scarcity. Okay, this is a scarcity system,
Yeah.
and it's managed control of scarcity, and this goes all the way back to 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and the Agriculture Act that he put in place to take control over the food supply, so that they could commoditize it, so they intentionally, when you look back in 1930, and the food was short, there wasn't enough food, they were the Dust Bowl, and it's true, there was an agricultural a natural event, and it was very dry, and but in fact, no, because of the depression, they had assets had exchanged. The government took over and commoditized and started funding and subsidizing agriculture. All that was is to manage it. They did this in Russia too. They forced a famine to take control of the food supply. And that is underway again. And even with the vaccine rollout, and even with everything that is happening here, the housing market, it is all built upon a scarcity mindset. We're going to run out. Oh, you're going to be the last one. There's not enough of it. There's not enough of it. There's not enough time in the day. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough this. Your marks aren't high enough. You could apply this scarcity tactic that they've used in literally every aspect of your life. We don't have enough. We don't have enough. We don't have enough. Not enough time in the day. I need more of this. I need more of that. And it just keeps you buying into you're not enough.
Exactly.
You're not enough.
Which is exactly what we started out having the conversation about. That is the universal story that they're playing on, because scarcity is literally a selling technique. And it also is
Absolutely.
pushing us into the pro poor mentality, which is the you'll own nothing and be happy, to lead us into
Right.
a full control system of being connected to the cloud, which is why Apple's name for the cloud was just conditioning us. Because you have to
Absolutely.
understand that they don't just unroll something. Like, this is not a vaccine, other than the fact that it's been given that designation so that they could actually use it under the Emergency Measures Act. What they do is, so at first they introduced technology and said every home will have a computer, and so then that happened.
Right.
And then they said, well, everyone will wear that technology, and so then you had the phone, so then you carried it, and then they said you'll wear it, and then they got the smartwatch, and then they say, well, we'll just inject you with it, and then you don't have to do anything, and it's easy. But that
Yeah.
was just all conditioning us
Yeah.
to buy into the system of full control, where you literally can get programmed with ideas that are not even yours, because when you're so full of aluminium, which is how the English
Yeah.
say it, but if you're so full of metals that
Yeah.
you are not able to think clearly, then when you get memories planted in and you stopped trusting yourself, then you just become like in the Matrix, where the Smith agents can overtake any body
That's
that
right.
is in the Matrix still. That literally is a documentary for what is possible if we don't have these conversations to say, I know it's ugly, and it's also something we can do about it. We just have to say no.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about rejecting, it's about rising above. So rejection is the first
Absolutely.
piece, but then we rise above it, and then we assert our rights. And that is where personal accountability and responsibility and liability need to come into the picture.
That's right. Well, and that's the thing too. We have become a whole society of people that want to be taken care of. Not
Right.
all of us, but mostly people just want to be taken care of. So that's why they fail. It is impossible to say, oh, I couldn't find information about this. It is difficult to find some information, especially the information that you and I are looking for, but it is not impossible. And the fact of the matter is, we have lost the technique, and we have failed to understand that it is our duty to find out about things that are going to affect us. When the World Economic Forum or the World Health Organization, just you name it, whoever, and in this case, the World Economic Forum, right, is announcing, has said this publicly, June 2021, there's going to be some kind of massive grid takedown. There's going to be some failure with the Wi-Fi. There's going to be something worse than coronavirus. When someone's saying that over and over again, and you just think, no, I'm not going to bother looking into it, that's a failure on your part to take personal responsibility and accountability for your own self, because you are a part of the system. You do have money in a bank, and then what? We didn't know, and now what are we going to do? Well, the people that created the problem are going to be right there to help you get out of it, but then you're not going to like where you are. And that's the thing. We used to be able to have conversations. I look back to my grandparents, just a generation, 2 generations, it's gone, debating, reading the newspaper, educating yourself, understanding things, and then talking about it. That used to be something that people prided themselves on. Yeah. That now, and that's intentional. We've introduced so many useless things that, like Facebook and social media, that distract us from the actual bigger picture. You feel informed, but in fact, you're just informed on the garbage someone's feeding you.
And it's also,
so, I mean,
sorry, the Google and the smart home systems, where it's like you don't even have to think about it. You don't have to carry the information yourself. It's just like, oh, I'll just Google it. And that's strategic too, because we have become a group of people that don't want to think. It's just like there's a saying about 97% of people don't think, 2% of people don't want to think, and 1% actually do. I might have got that wrong, but that's literally the picture.
It sounds about right, exactly, because it's scary. And it's like I was saying earlier, when you're facing a problem, and I was speaking to the situation that we went through with my son. And again, I've come across this caring for my elderly grandparents with my mother, all throughout, coronavirus, getting our men here for the temporary foreign workers and all of the hurdles and problems that are intentionally put in front of us.
Mhm.
You have to look through, you have to be thinking, and you have to keep looking for solutions. I pray a lot, to surround myself like the people who are supposed to be in my life, who are going to help me to come to conclusions, to work through problems, will come into my life. And they do, actually. And so, but it's continuing on that thought, and it's continuing to seek. Most people just don't want to do it, and they feel that they're overwhelmed and busy. And again, that's by design, because we are constantly on this idea of scarcity. We don't have enough, 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 enough. And so they're too busy to even think. And it's like, you're really not. And I don't know. I think I was thinking back, you were talking about the rollout of the phones and the technology and then the jab. I have to believe that the perpetrators of all of this, going all the way back to the 60s, probably 50s even, they have to be in some way astounded at the ability of the human body to resist the poisons and the metals and the injections and the food and the poison and everything that's coming at us. And here we are having this conversation. You know what I mean? It's actually pretty amazing. And so I don't fear that we won't overcome this. Everybody won't. And I don't know what that looks like exactly. But I'm like a David and Goliath person. Do you know what I mean? Like I totally am. And I think speaking of David and Goliath, if you haven't read the book by Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath, it's phenomenal. And he gives multiple accounts of situations where the David, statistically in every way is at a loss and never should have won. But it was faith. It was saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Exactly what you said too. In the name of Jesus, or do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's not happening. And it's standing on that. You win every time if you stand on that. It doesn't matter how small and weak you are. If that wasn't true, Laura, they wouldn't be out to get us like they are.
Yeah.
We're nothing. We're nothing to them, but we are something.
We're the most sophisticated machine that has ever been created, which is why it can't be replicated. And so, to protect our organic nature and to remain natural men and women that understand who we are, whose we are, regardless of the box that we put God into, is what is
Mhm.
going to help us understand that if we just take the box walls down, we can keep our faith foundation. Whatever it is that you believe in that makes you feel safe, keep that, because that is what helps you stay strong. And then just drop those walls so that then you can at least see what's going on around you with open eyes, real eyes, what's happening. And then you can let those walls overlap with the other people's walls that have also dropped around you. And suddenly we have a bridge that merges the world so that we are the ones that connect the dots, which is not just information. We each carry a key that will unlock a door in somebody because of the question we ask them to activate an answer they didn't know to look for before, which is what coaching is. And if we actually understand that the dots that we are connecting are us, the lighthouses, that when we fall, other people run because boats don't want to be there when the lighthouse falls. They can't help that. They're not on that.
That's great.
But we are the lighthouses. You who watch this would resonate and be here for as long as what you have to be able to get to this point in the message. You're a lighthouse and you keep people around you strong. So you need to own that and understand that. And on my hand, I have the fight between the good and evil. It's the
Yes.
karaoke parable that I literally wore on my hand this way when I was in there, because right before that, I'd been in Arizona at the Hilton Embassy Suites, and there was a bartender, and I was drinking virgin. I don't really like alcohol because it opens you up to spirits, which is why it's called a spirit. and Raphael was giving me virgin pickly pears. And it was so funny because we connected and we bonded, and he saw my light and I saw his, and we were just having fun and working the room, and I was playing with people and just sprinkling magic. And ironically, there was an FBI CIA agent conference happening while I was there, of course. And so I share this only because Raphael, before I left, when he could see that like the fight between the fearful and the faithful within me was kicking off, and I was starting to perceive things on the outside in a way that most people aren't dialed into, he took this off of his wrist and he put it on mine and said, I think you're going to need that more than I did.
That's awesome.
And I carried it on my hand like this when I was in there, just remembering what was going on and why. So I want to wrap this up today and simply say that we are stronger when we are together. The fight is waging on the outside, and if it's on the outside, it's because there's an element of it on the inside too, that we need to own so that we can rise above it. And Rachel, I'd love for you to share a final sentiment for today and sincerely say thank you for the value you've offered people today.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. Absolutely, it was a great conversation. One of the things I've been thinking all along when you are talking about the lighthouses, my favorite song in church when I was little was "This Little Light of Mine." You know, I'm gonna let it shine. And one of the at one point in the song it says, Satan, you know, is gonna try to blow it out, and don't let Satan blow it out. I'm gonna let it shine. And so I just, you know, I love what you're saying about light, and it is so true. You know, we must continue to shine our light. We must continue to speak truth, and we are, and we're never going to stop. And the more we do, the more we connect, and the more people that we bring in, and that's something. That's a force. That's a force. And you know, I think I've just continued to encourage people to understand you are enough. You have enough. A medical officer of health, a prime minister, a government official, a doctor, a nurse, whoever it is that's resisting you and saying you know you don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. They're not more than you. They are not more than you. We are everything we need to be, and we have everything within us to stand strong and firm in our message and to find other people to walk with us in this journey. And so I'm blessed that we had this conversation, Laura, and I hope to have many more.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. And the thing that I want to end as well, just in saying, because of you saying about the message, it reminds me of the point about the Messiah and how we've been taught that the Messiah is coming, and it's just like, what if we actually looked at the fact that if you take the stick of the H and turn it downwards, you actually see that the Messiah was the mess I am who owned it.
That's right. Yes, that's awesome. I love it. Yeah. Biggest rebellion ever waged in the history of humanity was with 12 people led by Christ, right? That was the first and most successful rebellion. And you know what? Everything good in the history of humanity was a result of people who rebelled against the system. Okay? The people who went along with it ushered it in. It was the people who stood up and said, no, something has to change, that made changes for good. And that's the path that we are on. And I'm proud to be walking it with you, Laura. Thank you.
Amen. You too, Rachel. Thank you so much. And if you received value today, please do like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment, because you matter. We see you. We're here with you, and continue to shine your light. Thanks so much.
For sure. Awesome. Bye.